The rain had just started to fall over Lagos. That kind of slow, thoughtful rain that soaks the streets before anyone even realizes it's begun. Inside a small pharmacy near Yaba, Aisha Lawal was counting the last few boxes of antibiotics before closing. Her eyes were tired. Her mind was elsewhere, somewhere between yesterday's worries and tomorrow's loneliness. Then the doorbell rang. A man stepped in, shaking the rain from his shirt. He looked exhausted, pressing one hand against his forehead. "Good evening, madam," he said softly. "Please, do you have something for headaches?" Aisha lifted her head. For a second, their eyes met, hers calm and steady, his kind but restless. "Yes," she replied, her voice careful but gentle. "Take this paracetamol. It'll help," he smiled. "Thank you. I'll remember this pharmacy." She nodded politely, not knowing that this would be the first of many visits. Over the following weeks, Daniel Okoro found more reasons to stop by. Sometimes it was toothpaste, sometimes vitamins, sometimes nothing at all. He just wanted to see her, and little by little, Aisha started to notice. She began to expect the quiet man with the kind eyes and soft smile who always made her day a little less heavy. One evening, when the rain was falling again, Daniel finally found the courage to speak what his heart had been saying for weeks. "You work too hard," he said, leaning on the counter. "Maybe someone should take you out once in a while, for dinner, or just suya and cold malt." Aisha laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had in months. "That sounds suspiciously like an invitation, Mr. Okoro," he smiled. "It absolutely is." That night marked the beginning of something neither of them expected. A love that felt simple, honest and clean. Daniel was a man of faith, a quiet Christian who believed that integrity was the highest form of love. He worked as an IT engineer in Ikeja, known among his friends as the kind of man who would rather lose money than lose peace of mind. Aisha, on the other hand, carried the kind of calm that comes from surviving pain. She spoke little of her past, always turning the conversation away whenever it brushed too close to her personal life. She lived with her father, a retired teacher, and occasionally mentioned a nephew named Ibrahim, a boy she said was the child of her late sister. Daniel never questioned it. He loved her sincerity, her grace, her ability to listen. To him, she was everything he had prayed for. So one Sunday afternoon, while they sat under a mango tree outside her father's compound, Daniel said the words she had both longed for and feared. "I want to marry you, Aisha." The air seemed to stop. Her heart pounded, not with joy, but with fear. In that instant, she remembered everything she had buried. The truth about Ibrahim, the whispers of her past, the men who had left her when they discovered she was a mother. She swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "I've never been surer of anything," Daniel replied. "You're my peace, Aisha." From that day, preparations began. Daniel met Aisha's father, a dignified Muslim man who, to everyone's surprise, accepted the young Christian with grace. He saw honesty in Daniel's eyes, and perhaps that was enough. Religion could divide people, yes, but character could bridge worlds. Soon, both families gathered. There was laughter, food, and celebration. In the middle of it all, a small boy, Ibrahim, ran across the yard, laughing. Daniel paused, watching him. The child had Aisha's eyes. The same shape, the same glow. He turned to her. "Your nephew looks just like you," he said, smiling. Aisha froze for a second, then forced a small laugh. "Yes, everyone says that. He's my late sister's son. I just take care of him." Daniel nodded, completely unaware of the storm that was hiding behind those words. At that moment, he saw only a good woman with a kind heart, and the boy who would one day call him uncle. The marriage took place in a quiet ceremony, the union of two souls from different worlds, united by love and tolerance. Daniel's friends teased him, calling him lucky man, and indeed, he felt blessed beyond words. He rented a modest house in Surulere, decorated the living room himself, and painted one wall with Aisha's favorite color, sky blue. They moved in together, and soon Ibrahim joined them, living under Daniel's roof. Every evening, Daniel returned from work to find Aisha in the kitchen, humming an old Hausa song while cooking. The smell of jollof rice filled the air, and Ibrahim would come running into his arms, shouting, "Daddy!" At first, Daniel laughed. He had told the boy to call him uncle, but Ibrahim had refused. "You're like my daddy," the boy said, pouting, and in Daniel's heart, something melted. He began to see Ibrahim not as someone else's child, but as his own. He even went as far as changing the boy's surname, saying it was wrong for a child to grow without a father's name. Ibrahim Okoro, he wrote proudly on the school forms. Aisha said nothing. She couldn't. 3 years passed like a dream. Their home became a place of peace and laughter. Daniel would often say, "Aisha, you've given me more than I ever asked God for." And she would smile, pretending that her heart wasn't burning with guilt. Each night, she prayed in silence, not as a Muslim, not as a Christian, but as a woman desperate for forgiveness. She asked God to hide the truth forever, to let her keep this happiness a little longer. But God, she would later realize, does not bless what is built on lies. One Friday evening, Daniel came home later than usual. Aisha had cooked his favorite dish, a goosey soup with pounded yam, and was waiting at the table with Ibrahim. The boy laughed, telling stories about school, his face glowing with innocence. Then came a knock at the gate. Aisha frowned. Who could that be at this hour? She told the maid to sit. She would open the gate herself. Outside stood a man she had not seen in years. Tired eyes, rough beard, a plastic folder under his arm. Her heart dropped to her knees. It was Bello, Ibrahim's biological father. That moment felt like lightning splitting the night. Bello spoke quietly, his voice trembling. "Aisha, I've changed. I have a job now. I've come to take my son." She froze. "No, you can't. He doesn't even know you." From inside, Daniel's voice echoed. "Who's at the gate?" Aisha turned sharply. "No one, just someone lost." But before she could close the door, Bello raised his voice. "I want my son, Aisha!" The world went silent. Daniel appeared behind her, confusion in his eyes. "What did he just say?" Her lips trembled. Bello pointed toward the house. "Ibrahim, the boy inside. He's my child." Daniel's face changed. It wasn't anger at first. It was disbelief. He looked from Bello to Aisha, his heart refusing to accept what his mind already knew. "Aisha," he said slowly. "What is this man talking about?" Tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but the words refused to come. Bello stepped forward. "It's true. I left them years ago. I wasn't ready to be a father, but now I'm back for my son." Daniel's hands started to shake. His voice cracked. "So all this time, Ibrahim is your son?" Aisha lowered her head. "Yes." It was the simplest word she had ever spoken, and the most devastating. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't curse. He simply walked inside, packed a small bag, and placed his wedding ring on the table. Aisha tried to follow him. "Daniel, please, I can explain." But he raised a hand. "No, there's nothing left to explain." He opened the door and stepped out into the rain, the same rain under which they had first met. And just like that, love left the house. Aisha sank to the floor, her sobs echoing through the walls. Ibrahim, half asleep, came out of his room. "Mummy, what's wrong?" She pulled him close and whispered through her tears. "Nothing, my son. Nothing." But she knew that everything was gone. The night Daniel left, the rain didn't stop. It fell for hours, as if heaven itself was mourning the end of their love. Inside the house, Aisha sat on the cold tiles of the living room floor, her dress soaked in tears and rainwater. The silence was unbearable. The smell of a goosey soup still lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of the meal that would never be eaten. She didn't sleep. She didn't move. All she could hear were his last words echoing in her mind. "There's nothing left to explain." Those 6 words shattered her more than any shout could. By morning, Daniel was gone. Truly gone. His clothes, his Bible, his laptop, everything had disappeared. Only the framed wedding photo on the shelf remained, showing 2 smiling faces that already felt like strangers. 8-year-old Ibrahim didn't understand. He came into the living room rubbing his eyes, his school uniform half buttoned. "Mummy, where's Daddy?" Aisha froze. The word daddy hit her like a blade. He's gone for work," she lied weakly. But children have a way of knowing what adults try to hide. That evening, when Daniel didn't return, Ibrahim sat quietly on the couch, staring at the door. He waited long after bedtime, the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, he stopped asking. Daniel had moved into his older brother's apartment in Ikeja. He spoke little, ate less, and prayed without peace. His brother Chinedu watched helplessly as Daniel sank deeper into himself. "Danny, you can't keep locking yourself up like this," he said one morning. Daniel's eyes were hollow. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. She lied to me, Chinedu, for 3 years, that boy. The boy I called my son isn't mine. She made me a fool in front of the world, Chinedu sighed. She didn't lie because she hated you. She lied because she feared losing you. Daniel turned sharply. That's no excuse. You don't build a home on fear. He got up and left the room, pacing. She could have told me. I would have loved her anyway. I loved that boy as my own. But she didn't trust me enough to tell the truth. He punched the wall lightly. Not in anger, but in disbelief. Do you know what hurts the most? Every time I see Ibrahim's smile in my memory, I still feel love. Even now, Chinedu put a hand on his shoulder. Then maybe that love means something more than pain. Daniel didn't answer. But deep down, the seed of forgiveness had been planted, even if he couldn't admit it yet. Back in Surulere, Aisha became a shadow. She went to the pharmacy every day, working as if nothing had happened. But her co-workers noticed the emptiness in her eyes. She had stopped wearing her wedding ring. She barely spoke. At home, she avoided mirrors. Every night, she sat by Ibrahim's bed, watching him sleep. She whispered, I'm sorry, my son. I tried to protect us, but I only destroyed us. Her father, Malam Lawal, came to visit one afternoon. He had heard the rumors. Aisha, people are talking, he said quietly. They say Daniel left you. She nodded, tears gathering. It's true. And the reason? The truth, Baba. I hid the truth too long. The old man sighed deeply, rubbing his prayer beads. Lies are heavy, my daughter. They always break the hand that carries them. Weeks later, one of her co-workers called her into the office. Aisha, there's someone on the phone for you. From Hearts Restored TV, she frowned. Hearts Restored? Yes, that relationship show where couples tell their stories. They said you wrote to them. Aisha's heart raced. She had forgotten the desperate message she had sent at 3 a.m. one night. A long confession about the man she'd betrayed, and her wish to apologize publicly. The producer's voice was warm on the line. Mrs. Aisha Okoro? We received your story. We believe it could help many people. Would you be willing to come on air? Maybe even invite your husband? Her throat tightened. He won't come. He hates me. Sometimes love listens, even when it looks silent, the producer replied gently. Aisha didn't believe that, but she agreed. Maybe speaking out loud would be her last act of honesty. Meanwhile, Daniel was restless. For 3 months he had lived between bitterness and nostalgia. Some nights he replayed every memory in his mind. The laughter, the meals, the small hand of Ibrahim holding his. Then anger would return, burning everything again. One evening, he received a message from an unknown number. We're reaching out regarding your wife, Mrs. Aisha Okoro. She'll be appearing tomorrow on Hearts Restored. She wishes to apologize publicly. You're invited to attend. Daniel stared at the screen for a long time. At first he deleted the message, but that night he couldn't sleep. At dawn he whispered into the darkness, God, if you want me to go, give me peace in my heart. The peace didn't come, but curiosity did. The next evening, the studio lights of Hearts Restored glowed bright against the Lagos skyline. Cameras hummed. Audience members whispered in anticipation. Aisha sat quietly on stage, her palms shaking. She wore a plain white dress and no makeup. Her face looked older, not from age, but from pain. The host, Pastor David, smiled gently at her. Mrs. Okoro, thank you for coming. Please, in your own words, tell us what happened. Aisha took a breath. Her voice quivered as she began. I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to confess. The audience grew silent. I met a man who showed me love when I thought I didn't deserve it. He married me, accepted my family, even accepted a child I told him was my nephew. But that child is my son. I lied because I was afraid, and in trying to protect my happiness, I destroyed it. She paused, her voice breaking. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want him to know that I still love him, that I never meant to hurt him, and that if I could go back, I would tell the truth the very first day. Tears filled her eyes. The camera zoomed in on her trembling hands. The entire room felt the weight of her honesty. The host nodded slowly. Thank you, Aisha. Fear can make even good people do desperate things. But sometimes truth comes to set us free. Tell me, if Daniel were here tonight, what would you say to him? Aisha looked up, her lips trembling. I would tell him, I'm sorry for every lie, for every tear. I would tell him that no one could ever love him like I did. The audience remained silent. Some wiped tears. Then the host looked toward the back of the studio. "Mrs. Okoro," he said softly, "what if I told you Daniel is here tonight?" Aisha froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She turned slowly, and there he was, Daniel, standing at the entrance of the stage, his face half hidden in the light. Gasps filled the studio. He walked toward her slowly, not with anger, but with the cautious steps of a man walking through memories. When he sat down beside her, Aisha couldn't hold back her tears. "Daniel, I didn't think you'd come." He looked at her, his eyes still heavy with pain, but softer than before. "I almost didn't." The host gave them space. The cameras kept rolling. Daniel spoke first. "Why, Aisha? That's all I want to know. Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" She met his gaze, broken but sincere. "Because I trusted fear more than love. Because every man before you left me when I told them the truth. I couldn't lose you too." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong. I should have believed in you. You didn't deserve lies." Daniel exhaled slowly. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. "For 3 years, I believed we had the perfect home. I called that boy my son. I gave him my name, and now every memory feels poisoned." "I know," she whispered, "and I will carry that guilt forever." The host turned to Daniel. "Mr. Okoro, the world has heard her truth. The question is, can you forgive it?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. His eyes wandered to the audience, then back to Aisha. "I don't know if I can forgive today, but I know I can't hate her either, because hate can't live where love once truly existed." The audience applauded softly. He turned to Aisha. "I'm not ready to come home yet. My heart still bleeds. But the boy, Ibrahim, he's still my son. I'll take care of him because that's what love does." Aisha nodded through her tears. "That's all I could ever ask." Daniel stood slowly. "I need time, but maybe one day we'll find peace." He turned to leave. As he walked off stage, the lights dimmed slightly, leaving Aisha in a pool of soft white light, crying, praying, whispering his name. And for the first time in months, her tears weren't just of sorrow, they were of release. The days after the broadcast were painfully quiet. Across Lagos, people whispered about the woman who confessed on live TV. Some said she was brave, others said she was foolish. But for Aisha, none of it mattered. For the first time in years, she was living honestly. No more lies, no more masks, no more running. Her nights were heavy, but her conscience was light. She prayed not for Daniel to return, but for him to find peace, wherever he was. Daniel, miles away in Abuja, couldn't escape her voice. One night, the video of her confession appeared on his phone. He told himself he wouldn't watch. But he did, and as soon as he heard her trembling voice, as soon as he saw the pain in her eyes, the anger he'd buried began to loosen. He remembered the woman who made him laugh, the quiet dinners, the way she held his hand during prayer. When the pastor at his church preached about forgiveness, his chest tightened. "Forgiveness," the pastor said, "does not excuse the wrong. It frees the heart from its chains." Daniel closed his eyes. "God," he whispered, "teach me how." That night, Aisha sat at her desk under the soft yellow light of a candle. She wrote him another letter, one among many she never sent. Each one began the same. "My dearest Daniel, I know I no longer have the right to call you mine, but I thank God every day that once you chose me." In those pages she poured her truth, how she had once been abandoned, humiliated, left to raise a child alone, how she'd learned to wear strength like armor, and how Daniel's love had pierced that armor and made her afraid. "I lied because I loved you," she wrote, "and that is no excuse. It is only the truth." She folded the paper gently, as though touching a memory, and placed it inside a small wooden box. Time moved on. Months slipped away like dust in the Harmattan wind. Daniel busied himself with work, but peace stayed out of reach. Each time he saw a father and son on the street, something twisted inside him. He thought of Ibrahim, the boy who had once called him Daddy. He missed that voice, that laughter, the tiny hands that once held his. One evening, after another long, empty day, Daniel picked up his phone and dialed her number. It rang twice before he heard her voice. "Hello?" she said, cautious, fragile. He swallowed. "It's me." A pause. Then a trembling whisper. "Daniel." For a few seconds, neither spoke. The air between them was filled with everything they had lost. Finally, he said softly, "How's Ibrahim?" She smiled through her tears. "He's fine. He still asks about you every night." Daniel closed his eyes. "I'd like to see him." She hesitated, then said, "You can. Anytime. Tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow. The next evening, the sun was dipping low, painting the streets gold when Daniel arrived at the gate he once called home. The same metal gate he'd walked out of in the rain nearly a year ago. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the echo of his own heartbeat. Then he knocked. Aisha opened the door. For a second she froze, breath caught, eyes wide. He looked older, leaner, but there was gentleness in his eyes. "Daniel," she breathed, afraid to blink in case he disappeared. He smiled faintly. "You look different." "So do you." Then, from inside the house, a voice rang out. "Mummy, who's there?" Before she could answer, Ibrahim came running. The moment he saw Daniel, he stopped, his eyes brightening in recognition. "Daddy!" he cried, sprinting into his arms. Daniel froze, then knelt down and held him. The boy's small arms wrapped around his neck with such innocence that all the walls inside Daniel's heart began to crumble. He held him close, eyes shut, tears falling silently. In that moment, everything, the pain, the distance, the pride, melted away. Later that night, after Ibrahim had fallen asleep, Aisha brought tea to the veranda. The house felt alive again, like it had taken a deep breath after months of silence. They sat under the old mango tree where he had once proposed. The air was cool, the crickets loud. For a while they said nothing. Then Daniel spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I've thought about everything. The anger, the lies, the hurt. I carried it like a stone in my chest." Aisha lowered her eyes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not," he replied softly. "But grace isn't about deserving." He turned to face her. "I didn't come back to reopen the wound. I came back to see if it still beats underneath the scar." She looked up, tears glistening. "It does," she whispered, "but it's broken." "Then let's heal it together," he said. Her breath caught. "You mean—" "Yes," he said. "I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I'm done living angry. I don't want to spend my life punishing you for something you already regret." Aisha's face crumpled. She covered her mouth as tears poured down. "Daniel, why? After everything I did?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "Because love isn't blind," he said softly. "It sees everything and still chooses to stay." Weeks passed. Daniel didn't move back immediately. He came often, to see Ibrahim, to talk, to rebuild. Slowly, laughter returned to the house. They began counseling at church, sitting side by side again. Not as strangers, but as two people learning each other from the start. One Sunday, as the choir sang "Amazing Grace," Daniel reached for her hand. The sunlight through the stained glass touched their faces, and for the first time in years, she smiled without guilt. Later, he went to her father's house. The old man opened the door and smiled faintly when he saw him. "Daniel," he said, "I did not expect to see you again." Daniel bowed respectfully. "Sir, I came to ask for your daughter's hand again, this time with truth." Malam Lawal nodded slowly. "Then may this marriage be stronger than the lie that broke it. Build on honesty and it will stand." A few weeks later, they remarried quietly. No photographers, no crowd, no noise, just family, faith and forgiveness. Ibrahim wore a tiny black suit and grinned the whole time. When the pastor asked Daniel to speak, he said simply, "I forgive you. From this day, we live in light." Aisha's tears fell freely. "And I promise to never let fear speak for me again. Only truth." When they kissed, the applause was small but heartfelt. Ibrahim clapped his hands and shouted, "Daddy and Mummy are back!" The laughter that followed was the sound of redemption. Years passed. They moved to Ibadan, where life was quieter, gentler. Daniel opened a small tech firm. Aisha ran a pharmacy near the market. Every evening, they sat on the porch watching Ibrahim ride his bicycle, dust rising behind his wheels, laughter floating through the air. One evening, as the sunset burned gold on the horizon, Aisha turned to him and asked softly, "Do you ever regret coming back?" He smiled, eyes still fixed on their son. "Every day I refused to forgive you would have been a day I'd regret." She leaned on his shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that love without truth is fragile, but truth with love is unbreakable." He nodded slowly. "That's our story now, not a wound, a witness." They sat in silence as Ibrahim's laughter echoed down the street. The light faded, the crickets sang, and peace, that long, elusive peace, finally found them. Somewhere, deep within both of them, a quiet voice whispered the lesson they had lived to learn. Love built on lies will always tremble, but love rebuilt on truth will never fall. And as the evening breeze carried the laughter of their child into the night, Aisha closed her eyes and smiled. The past was forgiven. The truth had set them free. Time has a way of healing what words cannot. Years rolled forward, quietly, like waves retreating after a storm. The wounds that once bled in silence had turned into scars, not ugly, but sacred, the kind that remind you of what it cost to become whole again. In Ibadan, the Okoros built a quiet life. Daniel's tech company grew slowly but steadily, and Aisha's pharmacy became known in the community as the place where kindness was sold with every prescription. People admired her calm spirit, unaware that it was born not from peace, but from pain overcome. Every morning, she opened the shop before sunrise, humming softly as she arranged the shelves. Customers came with their troubles, their aches, their confessions, and somehow her presence eased them. One old woman once told her, "Your smile feels like prayer." Aisha smiled faintly and whispered, "It is." At home, Daniel found new joy in fatherhood. Ibrahim, now 13, had become his shadow, helping at the office after school, asking endless questions about computers, wires, and life. Daniel would look at him sometimes and marvel. Love truly isn't about blood. It's about choice. At night, when the city grew quiet and the sky deepened into indigo, Daniel would sit on the porch, Bible in hand, the sound of crickets echoing in the distance. Aisha would join him, her head resting gently on his shoulder. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It was filled with understanding, the quiet language of two people who had walked through fire and come out holding hands. One Saturday, the three of them visited Lagos. Ibrahim had been invited to speak at his school's debate competition. The topic was truth and integrity in modern society. Aisha sat in the audience, heart racing as her son took the stage. The microphone wobbled in his small hand. He looked at the crowd, cleared his throat, and began. "My teacher told me that truth is like light," he said, his young voice steady. "Even if you cover it, it will always find a way to shine through the cracks." The audience leaned in. He continued, "Sometimes people lie because they're afraid. They think the truth will destroy them, but my parents taught me something different. They taught me that the truth can hurt, yes, but lies hurt forever." A soft murmur moved through the hall. Daniel and Aisha exchanged a glance, pride mixed with tears. "My father once told me," Ibrahim went on, "that love and truth walk hand in hand. If you lose one, you'll lose the other. And I believe that's true." The room erupted in applause. Aisha pressed her hands to her chest, overwhelmed. Daniel smiled through glistening eyes. For a moment, the ghosts of their past dissolved completely. Their story, once a scar, had become their son's strength. After the competition, as the sun set over the city, they walked together along the quiet waterfront. The golden light reflected off the waves, warm and forgiving. Ibrahim skipped ahead, tossing pebbles into the water. Aisha looked at Daniel, her eyes soft. "Sometimes I still can't believe you stayed," she said. He chuckled lightly. "Sometimes I can't believe it either. But aren't you glad you did?" He nodded. "More than words can say." They stopped by the rail, watching their son chase his reflection on the surface of the lagoon. "Do you think he'll ever know how much he saved us?" she asked. Daniel looked at her tenderly. "He doesn't need to know. He just needs to live, truthfully." Aisha smiled. "Then maybe that's our legacy. Not what we built, but what we taught." Daniel reached for her hand. "No, Aisha, what we learned." That night, back in Ibadan, Aisha couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, gazing at the stars. The house was silent except for the sound of Daniel's steady breathing beside her. She thought about the years, the rain that started it all, the night she lost him, the day God gave them back to each other. She remembered the TV studio lights, the shame, the trembling voice that had confessed her sin to the world. Back then she had thought her life was over. Now she understood. It was the beginning. The day she told the truth, she didn't lose everything. She finally met the woman she was meant to become. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Lord, for breaking me only to rebuild me." The night air was cool, and the stars seemed to blink in response. 1,000 silent amens scattered across the heavens. Months later, the family was invited to speak at a church event titled "The Power of Truth." Daniel didn't want to at first. "We're not preachers," he said. We're just ordinary people who made mistakes. But the pastor insisted. That's exactly why people need to hear you. The church was packed that Sunday. Couples sat hand in hand. Young men and women listened quietly, and some came with wounds hidden deep behind polite smiles. Aisha stepped up to the pulpit, voice clear but humble. Years ago, she began, I told a lie that almost destroyed my home. I lied because I was afraid. I thought I was protecting love, but I was actually killing it. It took losing everything for me to understand that truth is not the enemy. Fear is. The crowd was silent. Daniel joined her, taking the microphone. I didn't come here as a man who was wronged, he said. I came as a man who learned that forgiveness is not weakness. It's strength. I realized that when you hold on to pain, you keep living inside the lie that hurt you. But when you forgive, you step back into the light. Tears filled many eyes in the audience. One woman reached for her husband's hand. A young man nodded quietly, wiping his face. Aisha smiled faintly, her gaze turning toward Daniel. Today, our marriage is not perfect, but it's honest, and that's all we need. The crowd erupted in applause, not for them, but for what they represented, the miracle of grace. That evening, as they drove home through the quiet highway, Ibrahim fell asleep in the back seat. The orange glow of streetlights flickered across his face. Daniel reached over and squeezed Aisha's hand. Do you remember the first time I saw you? He asked with a smile. In the pharmacy, she said, laughing softly. You came for painkillers. Looks like I found the cure instead. She laughed, wiping a tear. You always know what to say. And you always make me mean it. They drove in silence for a while. The hum of the tires on the road was steady, peaceful. Aisha leaned her head against the window, eyes closing slowly. For the first time, the word home didn't mean a place. It meant this: forgiveness, faith, and a family made whole by the truth. Years later, Ibrahim grew into a man of integrity, a teacher like his grandfather, and a mentor to children from broken homes. Whenever people asked him why he cared so much about truth, he would smile and say, because I was raised by two people who showed me that lies break hearts, but truth mends souls. And in that simple sentence lived the entire story of Aisha and Daniel, two ordinary people who learned that even the darkest lie can lead to light when love chooses to stay.